There's a test happening right now. You didn't sign up for it. You weren't told the rules. But every move you make, every choice you don't make, every moment you stay silent when others scream, it's being recorded, not by cameras, not by algorithms, by something far more subtle. They're not watching you to catch you doing something wrong. They're watching to figure out what category you belong in. And here's the part that will make your skin crawl. Most people never realize they're being sorted until the sorting is already done. You think you're just living your life, making decisions, reacting to circumstances, but someone, somewhere, is taking notes. They're not impressed by your loudness. They're intrigued by your silence. They're not tracking your successes. They're measuring how you handled the failures no one saw. This isn't about conspiracy theories or hidden agendas. This is about pattern recognition. This is about the way systems, people, and environments instinctively categorize those who don't fit the mold. You've felt it before, haven't you? That strange sensation that someone is paying attention to you, but not in the way you'd expect. Not with admiration, not with envy, with curiosity, with calculation, with the kind of quiet observation that doesn't need your permission or your awareness. It's the feeling you get when you walk into a room and the energy shifts, not because you did anything dramatic, but because your presence alone disrupted something invisible. That's not paranoia, that's recognition. You're being classified. And the criteria they're using? It's not what you think. Most people believe they're being judged on what they say, what they achieve, or how they present themselves. But that's surface-level analysis. The real classification happens deeper. It happens in the moments you thought no one was paying attention. It happens when you made a choice that didn't make sense to anyone else, but made perfect sense to you. It happens when you walked away from something everyone else was fighting for, or when you stayed calm in a situation designed to make you panic. Those moments, they're not forgotten. They're filed away, because systems don't care about your resume. They care about your operating system. They care about how you process, adapt, and respond when the script doesn't work anymore. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The people who get classified aren't always the loudest or the most visible. They're the ones who operate outside predictable patterns, the ones who make decisions that don't align with standard incentives, the ones who seem to know things they were never taught, the ones who adapt without instruction. If that sounds like you, then you've already been placed in a category. You just don't know which one yet. But by the end of this, you will, because the test isn't pass or fail. It's about figuring out what you're capable of when no one's telling you what to do. And if you've ever felt like your past was quietly following you into rooms you never announced yourself in, this is why. Let's talk about how this classification actually works. It's not dramatic. It's not announced. There's no email, no notification, no formal documentation that says, "Congratulations, you've been categorized." It's far more subtle than that. It starts with observation. Someone notices that you don't react the way others do. Maybe you stayed composed when chaos erupted. Maybe you asked a question that revealed you understood the game before anyone explained the rules. Maybe you made a choice that benefited you long-term, even though it cost you short-term approval. These moments don't scream for attention, but they leave a mark. And once that mark is made, the observation intensifies. Here's what most people don't realize. Classification isn't about judging you. It's about predicting you. Systems, whether they're social, institutional, or professional, thrive on predictability. They need to know how people will respond to pressure, incentives, and change. Most people are easy to predict. They follow patterns. They chase approval. They react emotionally. They conform to avoid conflict. But then there's you. You don't follow the script as expected. You pause when others rush. You question when others accept. You walk away when others cling. That unpredictability is what triggers the classification process, because if you can't be predicted, you can't be managed. And if you can't be managed, you become interesting. The classification isn't always negative. Sometimes it's neutral, sometimes it's strategic, but it always serves a purpose: to determine where you fit, or more accurately, where you don't fit. And here's the twist. The very traits that once got you overlooked are now the traits that make you valuable. Your ability to learn without being taught. Your tendency to adapt faster than your environment expects. Your refusal to seek constant validation. Your selective loyalty. These aren't weaknesses, they're signals. Signals that you operate on a different frequency. And once that frequency is detected, you're no longer invisible. You're categorized as someone who requires a different approach, a different level of attention, a different set of expectations. This is why you've probably noticed patterns in your life that others don't experience. Opportunities that come out of nowhere, conversations that feel like tests, people who seem to know more about you than you've shared, situations where you're given more responsibility, more freedom, or more scrutiny than seems warranted by your visible achievements. None of this is random. It's the result of classification. You've been sorted into a category that operates by different rules, and the moment you recognize this, everything changes. Because once you understand that you're being observed, not for what you do, but for how you operate, you can start using that awareness strategically. You can stop performing and start positioning. You can stop reacting and start directing. You can stop wondering why things feel different and start leveraging the fact that they are. So, what exactly triggers this classification? What makes someone move from normal participant to person of interest in the silent sorting system? It's not one thing. It's a pattern of behaviors that, when combined, create a profile too distinct to ignore. Let's break down the most common triggers, because if you've experienced even a few of these, you're already on the list. First, you learned things without formal instruction. You didn't wait for someone to hand you the manual. You observed, tested, absorbed, and applied knowledge that wasn't offered to you. That self-directed learning signals independence and intelligence, both of which make you unpredictable. Systems notice when someone doesn't need permission to grow. Second, you adapted faster than your environment expected. Change didn't freeze you. It activated you. While others were still processing what happened, you were already adjusting, recalibrating, finding the new path forward. That speed and fluidity is rare. It shows a mind that doesn't cling to old structures, which makes you both valuable and difficult to control. Third, you questioned rules before you questioned yourself. You didn't default to self-doubt when something didn't make sense. You examined the rule, the logic behind it, the system that enforced it. That critical thinking signals autonomy. It means you're not easily swayed by authority or tradition, which makes you harder to manipulate and easier to misunderstand. Fourth, you walked away from advantages others would kill for. You saw the cost hidden in the opportunity. You recognized when something valuable came with strings attached that weren't worth pulling. That discernment is powerful because it shows you're not motivated by standard incentives. If approval, status, or material gain don't control you, then what does? That question alone is enough to trigger deeper observation. Fifth, your reactions didn't match what pressure typically produces. Trauma, conflict, betrayal, these didn't break you the way they break others. You didn't collapse, lash out, or spiral. You processed, recalibrated, and moved forward with clarity. That emotional regulation and resilience is a marker of internal strength that can't be taught or faked. Sixth, you noticed inconsistencies others ignored. You saw the gaps, the contradictions, the things that didn't add up. While everyone else accepted the surface story, you connected dots no one else could see. That pattern recognition is a form of intelligence that makes you quietly dangerous because you can't be easily misled. Seventh, you resisted identity programming early on. You didn't accept the labels, roles, or categories handed to you. You built your own framework, your own definitions, your own sense of self. That autonomy signals a mind that won't be molded by external expectations. And finally, you became self-referenced instead of externally validated. You stopped measuring yourself against others' opinions and started trusting your own internal compass. That independence is the final marker, because once someone stops needing approval, they become almost impossible to control through conventional means. Now that you understand what triggers classification, let's talk about why it happens. Why does this silent sorting system exist? Why do certain people get observed, categorized, and tracked in ways others never experience? The answer is simpler than you think, because you represent potential that can't be ignored. You're not just another participant in the game. You're someone who could change the rules, disrupt the flow, or operate entirely outside the system. And that potential, whether it's used for alignment or disruption, must be understood. Because what isn't understood can't be anticipated, and what can't be anticipated can't be controlled. Classification serves multiple purposes depending on who's doing the observing. For some, it's strategic. They want to know if you're an asset, someone who can be leveraged, someone whose skills and independence can be directed toward a goal. For others, it's defensive. They want to know if you're a threat, someone whose clarity and perception might expose what they're trying to hide. And for a rare few, it's simply curiosity. They want to understand how you operate because you don't fit any existing model. You're an anomaly, and anomalies are always studied, whether or not you consent to the study. Here's the part that makes people uncomfortable. This classification happens everywhere. In professional environments, social circles, institutions, and even personal relationships. It's not always formal or conscious. Sometimes it's instinctive. People sense when someone operates differently, and they respond accordingly. They give you more space or more scrutiny. They test you more often or trust you more quickly. They keep you at a distance or pull you closer for reasons they can't fully articulate. That's classification in action. It's the invisible sorting process that determines who gets access, who gets opportunity, and who gets quietly watched from the sidelines. And here's the uncomfortable reality. You can't stop it. You can't opt out. The moment you start operating outside predictable patterns, the classification begins. But what you can do is recognize it. You can understand that the attention you're receiving, whether it feels positive or unsettling, is a response to who you are and how you move through the world. And once you recognize that, you gain power. Because you're no longer confused by why things feel different. You understand that your past, your choices, your patterns have created a signature that precedes you. And that signature is what's being classified, studied, and responded to in every room you enter. So where does this leave you? If you've recognized yourself in this description, if you've felt the weight of observation without understanding why, what do you do with this knowledge? First, you stop apologizing. Stop shrinking. Stop trying to blend in when your entire operating system is designed to stand out. The classification has already happened. Pretending to be ordinary won't reverse it. It will only make you feel like you're living a lie. Second, you use the awareness strategically. Understand that your actions, choices, and responses are being observed more closely than others. That's not a burden, it's leverage. It means you have influence even when you're not trying. Your restraint carries weight. Your silence speaks volumes. Your decisions set precedents. Third, you protect your independence. The moment you realize you're being classified, there will be attempts to manage, influence, or direct you. Some will be subtle. Others will be direct. But your power lies in maintaining your autonomy. Don't let observation turn into manipulation. Don't let interest turn into obligation. Stay self-referenced. Stay clear on your principles, and don't compromise your alignment just to make someone else comfortable with your complexity. Fourth, you recognize that being classified isn't the same as being understood. People will have theories about you. They'll make assumptions. They'll try to fit you into categories that make sense to them. Let them. You don't owe anyone an explanation. Your life, your choices, your patterns speak for themselves. The right people will understand without needing a breakdown. The wrong people wouldn't understand even if you gave them one. And finally, you embrace the fact that you were never meant to be ordinary. The classification you're experiencing is proof of that. You were built differently, you process differently, you move differently. And that difference is not a flaw, it's a feature. It's what makes you valuable, unpredictable, and impossible to ignore. So stop trying to erase it. Stop dimming it. Stop questioning whether it's real. It is real, and the world has already noticed. The only question left is, what are you going to do now that you know? Because the classification is complete. The observation is ongoing, and your next move will determine whether you leverage this awareness or let it quietly control you without your consent. Here's the truth they won't tell you directly. You've always been in a different category. The moments you thought you were invisible, you were being studied. The times you thought you were alone, you were being tracked. Not in a sinister way, not always, but in the way that people, systems, and environments naturally respond to someone who doesn't fit the standard model. You disrupted expectations without trying. You revealed patterns others missed. You operated with a logic that couldn't be easily replicated or predicted, and that made you interesting. That made you someone worth paying attention to, someone worth classifying. This isn't about fear, it's about awareness. It's about understanding that your life has been leaving a signature far more distinct than you realized. And now that you know, you have a choice. You can continue moving through the world unconsciously, letting the classification shape your opportunities and experiences without your input. Or you can step into the awareness fully, understanding that you've been sorted into a category that operates by different rules, carries different expectations, and opens different doors. The classification isn't a sentence. It's a signal that you've been recognized for operating at a level most people never reach. And now it's your turn to decide what that recognition means. Because here's the final piece. The people who understand this early move differently. They stop trying to prove themselves to those who will never understand. They stop seeking validation from systems built for conformity. They stop apologizing for the traits that make them unpredictable. Instead, then they lean in. They use their independence strategically. They operate with the awareness that their actions carry more weight than others realize. They move with intention, knowing that every choice is being observed, interpreted, and filed away. And they do it all without performing, without announcing, without needing anyone's permission. So, if you've felt the weight of observation, if you've sensed that your past is quietly following you, if you've wondered why things feel different for you than they do for others, now you know. You've been classified, not because you did something wrong, not because you're broken or flawed, but because you operate outside the predictable patterns that most people follow. You're someone who learned without being taught, adapted without instruction, questioned without fear, and walked away without regret. You're someone who can't be easily managed, predicted, or controlled, and that makes you rare. That makes you valuable. That makes you someone worth watching. The only question left is whether you'll watch back.